Coming up today, it's episode 94 of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. We sit down with Hall of Famer Dick LeBeau. You might know him more as a coach, defensive coordinator with the Steelers, the Bengals, others in the NFL, but he was a Hall of Fame player as well with the Detroit Lions. He shares his story with us and talks about his new book that's out called Legendary from Triumph Books. It concentrates on the 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl championship team, but so much to dive into and such a great background, great stories here from our guest. It's episode 94 of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro featuring Dick LeBeau. Coach, once again, I appreciate you spending a little time with us here today. It's great to have you here as you're, I guess, on your book tour with your new book out, Legendary, co-written by Scott Brown and George von Benko out of Triumph Publishing, publishing this book as well. Has this been a fun endeavor for you to kind of tell your story a little bit?
Well, it was a labor of love, Mike. And it's really the story of the 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And originally, that's all I wanted it to be, was focused on what they did and the amazing statistics that they put up defensively in that season, which was a championship year for us. We did win the Super Bowl. Of course, Ben Roethlisberger had to take us down the field in those last 3 minutes to win it for us. But that defense put up marks that I don't think are going to be equaled again. You know, records are made to be broken. Maybe someone will do it, but there's such an unusual group of people. And I thought to myself, I said, boy, when I get time, I might write a book about these guys. They were so unusual. And well, I didn't know then that I was going to work until I was 80 years old, but it didn't leave a whole lot of time for book writing. And when I did finally decide and get started on it, it took me 2 years because I really researched it, and there'd been enough time passed from 2008, 16 years now, in 2024. And I wanted to make sure that everything was still current. And amazingly, a little bit to me, it was even more dramatic, the space between that 2008 defense and what is really a good performance by defenses in today's game. So that was what was going to be. And we discovered as we got into it that my 59 years in the National Football League consecutively had to be in there a little bit. Couldn't talk about just them, I guess, without the coordinator. So once they convinced me that that was the case, I didn't fight that at all. I didn't mind having my name in there every now and then. It was good. But it was absolutely a labor of love devoted to those guys. And I think when people see, I took a little time at the beginning of the book to show them what the numbers were and what were good numbers and what their numbers were. So they can appreciate it without being a real aficionado of football, really. It's just a human interest story about a great group of guys.
Well, you said they were unique. What made them unique? You were the defensive coordinator for that group. What, in your mind, made them so unique?
In my experience from coaching, you have to have 11 starters on the field at all the time. But in the course of it, in this case, a 19-game season, you're going to have injuries. We were basically a 3-4 team, so we only had 3 real big guys, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting in the 3-4 defense, and you have to rotate them. You can't leave them out there; they'll drop off the limb on you. I mean, it's impossible physically to do. They were all of our athletes were in great shape, but we had to rotate through. And because of the injury situation, like our nose tackle, Casey Hampton, I think he missed 5 or 6 games. And our starting corner, Deshae Townsend, he missed probably 5 to 7 games. And when he could play, he had to just play that fifth defensive back. He had a hamstring, and he had to be really careful with it. So you had to have depth, you had to have talent, and in all of those guys When we lost Casey Hampton, when we lost to Shea, you never knew that the starting lineup wasn't in there. We didn't miss a step. We didn't miss a beat. Well, that's totally unusual. And the other thing was they were probably collectively the best bunch of tacklers that I've ever seen. We didn't give up any big plays. Whenever they could possibly block our 4 linebackers, who were all tremendously gifted, and our 3 defensive linemen, that was 7 great players. Whenever they did get them blocked, there were 4 defensive backs that never missed a tackle in behind them. So that equated to the offense always had to go the hard way against us. They couldn't throw it over our head because our corners could really play, and they couldn't run it because our front 7 could really play. And in my experience, that was about the only defense that I can recall where you didn't sit on the sideline and say, well, I got to be careful that they're starting to do this a little bit on us and they're doing that. It was just a matter of calling the defense and let them play.
And at that time, you were certainly a well-established coach as well. Was it easy for them to buy into what you were coaching them about and letting them know what was going to help them and help that team be successful?
Well, I was getting along really in terms of experience at that time, and it's laughable really that some people wouldn't like this, but they called me Coach Dad. And I said, well, I could really be Coach Grandfather. I mean, chronologically, I qualify in that situation. And I didn't mind that. I looked at it as a badge of honor. And when I first time I spoke to him, I'd been around the block a few times, been a head coach and been a coordinator for a long time. And I had a previous step coaching the Steeler defense. Mm-hmm. And we had gone to the Super Bowl once in that thing. So I told him the very first meeting I had with this group of players, I said, look, most people, young coaches, they're defensive coordinators, and they have higher aspirations. They want to go on, become head coaches. I mean, that's what we're all working for, particularly in the coaching aspect of things. No matter what sport you're in, you want to run the show, do things your way, get your philosophy in there. I said, I've had my run at that. I said, I want to do one thing. I want to help you guys become the best defense that you can become. I'm not going to be leaving here in 2 years if you become a great defense, which I think you can be. I said, but I'm going to be here with you, and you can sit back and listen to what we're going to do, because we're going to attack. And where the offense is running around with all these crazy motion shifts and formations that we always have to adjust, that's their trump card. They make us adjust. We're going to give them some things that they have to adjust to. And that's why in the title of the book, it says the zone blitz and the history of that a little bit. And like a peddler coming and knocking on your door, I was selling what I was going to do with them, and they bought it, and they were perfectly suited for what we were going to do. And that was what I think was a special, that, and we just had the right combination of guys, and they were so gifted. Every championship team has a magic formula that works in any sport. And when you watch them play, you can see these guys are a little bit different than their competition, and they usually win. And the more important or the dire the situation is in the game, the more likely players like Ben Roethlisberger and Troy Polamalu and James Harrison are going to come up with some huge play for you and win the daggum game. And that was evidenced in plenty of times throughout this particular year, and it's in the book, and the people can kind of go up and down with them as they won and lost. It's a good sports book is what it is.
Yeah, the book Legendary from Triumph Publishing. And again, it tells a story of you as well. And to backtrack a little bit, your story begins in London, Ohio, just outside of Columbus, eventually going to Ohio State, playing for Woody Hayes. What did that have? What kind of impact did that have on not only your playing career, but maybe your coaching career as well?
It wasn't I'm not included in that title as legendary. The way that became, that was going to be just the title of the book originally. And the legendary defense of 2008 was what I wanted. And the way I got that, we were playing the Cardinals in the Super Bowl in Florida, and they had scored on us twice in the fourth quarter. We played a great game, and we'd had this great year, and they riddled us twice in a row in the fourth quarter and took the lead. And I'm thinking, geez, here's this great defense. We've had this wonderful year, and now we're going to blow this thing in the Super Bowl. But Ben took them back down there. And when he scored, he threw that perfect pass to Centennial Holmes. And I think Holmes was the outstanding player in the game, because before then he had caught a hook from Ben early in the drive. We were 2nd and 18 in that drive on our own about 14-yard line. And Ben had to go all the way at 2nd and 18. Well, a play that got us out of that bind was just a regular hook 12-yard pass to Holmes, who came out the back door and ran it down to the Cardinals, maybe 8 to 12-yard line right down in there. And that's where they were throwing in the tight red zone. Ben was throwing. And they scored. And so we were getting ready to go on the field. Defensively, there was still about a minute to play in the game. And so the game wasn't over. They'd already just got done hitting us with a big pass play the last series we were out there. So Coach Tomlin got the team around him defensively. And he said, I've been in the league a while. He said, I've coached defense a while. He said he was part of the great Tampa Bay defense that won the Super Bowl. And he said, I've coached Super Bowl champion defenses. He said, you guys have been a great defense all year long. You've played great football all year long. Go out there right now, make this final stop, and you will become a legendary defense. And that, I went back, I had all 19 games on disc and studied every game so that I could be current. I remembered most of it, but I really wanted the book to be accurate. And so I watched every game, and that's why it was a 2-year project for me. And that was the main thing that I took out of that whole series, although I got a lot of really neat stuff out of watching all those games. But Coach Tomlin saying, you guys will be a legendary defense, I said, oh, there's the title for my book right there. So that's how that happened. And in terms of Woody Hayes, which I went on, I kind of trumped in there because of legendary. It's not about me. It's about a legendary defense. Coach Hayes, you know, they say there's an old saying in life, if it doesn't kill you, it's good for you. Well, he didn't kill me. I'm still here talking about him. He's a great coach. But I was blessed. I knew that I wanted to be a coach. And so even from a very, very early age, I would watch my coaches and study. And I then was fortunate enough to play 14 years in the National Football League. Well, I was 35 years old. I hadn't coached it down, but I had really been on the job training to coach all that time, because I got selected to a couple Pro Bowls, and I would sit down with Johnny Unitas and say, what are you looking for when you do this and that? And I would talk to all these great players and just trying to get myself a football background, if you will. So in that process, my first defensive coordinator, one of my very first ones, was Don Shula. I was drafted by Paul Brown. I played under Lombardi in a Pro Bowl game. So I was exposed to all these great coaches. And then I had my own good coaches at Detroit that I could observe on a daily basis. And you know, whatever you're studying to be, at least I did. I said, well, I don't know if I'd quite do it that way, you know, or I'd say, geez, that was neat the way Coach handled that, you know. And so I was lucky when I started naming those coaches for you, the guys that I was exposed to. And what I discovered was each one of those guys were totally different. Tom Landry, I was with him in the Pro Bowl, and but they were unusually gifted people who seemed to me to just be being themselves. That they were either naturally flamboyant or naturally reserved, or very, very pepper jack, emotional guys, or they were laid back guys. And I said, look, I think the best way to coach and live is just be yourself, and all you're doing is teaching. And that's what I wanted to be, was a teacher. I'd learned all this football, particularly in the defensive backfield, which is a really engrossing position, because angles come into play so much for the secondary people. They're always dealing with range of yardage and throwing the ball and then catching people that have broken loose and things of that nature. And I thought I learned all this the hard way, but getting my tail burnt off, covering people for 14 years. What am I going to do with it now, if I don't coach? So that motivated me even more to become a coach. And I never tried to be like anybody. I just knew my personality was my personality. My book of knowledge, if you will, had been garnered and over on-the-job training, and I would never quit. The one thing about coaching that'll never change, they can come up with all these high-tech assistant mechanisms that'll assist you doing this, doing that. Some point in time, you got to sit down in front of that screen and you got to look and you got to see what's happening, and you got to say, well, that's pretty good, or that's not good enough, or this would fit this type of a team, or this would fit that type of a player, and then you teach it. And I think the best advantage for anybody in any profession that they choose is experience. Mm-hmm. Because you go down a wrong lane every now and then. You got to be smart enough to say that's not working. And I will say, in the zone blitz, I dove off the board a lot of times to discover that the pool didn't have any water in it, man. I was going into cement. And I would see my guys, and I learned to trust people like Ryan Clark and Troy Polamalu, who were such gifted pair of safeties. And they were just like, they would work in unison at all times. So if I was coming up with something, I thought, oh, this ought to be really effective, and I'd watch them for a couple of days. I didn't make a snap judgment, but on practice, I said, if those two guys were having trouble doing it, it was out, because it had to be Coach LeBeau that was wrong on this thing. So you got to be big enough to say, hey, I don't have all the answers. This was a good idea, but it just doesn't work. And I think that, and the fact that these guys were willing to try anything that I put up there on the blackboard for them, and they were such gifted players that most of the stuff was tremendous, and they made it work.
Yeah, when you mentioned the zone blitz, was there an offense or a particular player that you had in mind when you were coming up with that zone blitz?
Yeah, without a doubt. They say necessity is the mother of invention. The offenses had completely caught up with pressure defense. Well, I wanted to pressure. The biggest plays that the defense make are like sack fumbles, interceptions, and most of them are caused by pressure on the quarterback. So I wanted to be able to do that. And in studying all these numbers of every play that we called that year for over a period of years, they were the most productive for the defense. However, they were all also the most costly. If one guy fell down in the blitz where you were playing zero coverage, that means there was nobody free to keep eyes on the ball, eyes on the quarterback. Where's the ball? Where's it happen? Can I get over there and save this from being a big play? If you were going to load up and really guarantee pressure, there were more huge impact plays for the offense too. And I just said, I want to pressure the West Coast offense. You've heard of that came through Joe Montana and those guys with quick release, and Bill Walsh was kind of the creator of that. They had reads that if you blitzed that guy, he was going to break into the dead spot and they were going to spot pass it, and it was out before your blitzer. They didn't maybe have a blocker for it, but a man can only run so fast, and a sharp quarterback was getting out there, and they had things worked out on that zero blitz. I said, well, what if we can devise a way of having a guy in that spot where they're automatic in breaking routes and beating the blitz so that nobody's got time to get to the quarterback. And I said, we can create a little surprise for that receiver because he's not used to anybody being there. And of course, at first, it really was impactful because no one had seen it. Mm-hmm. But it's still around. In fact, it's grown, and there's a lot of zone blitz. I think will still be around because it is safer and you can still get pressure. So that was the way that evolved. And in this particular team, this 2008 defense, there was the perfect complement of guys who were so athletic, who could fit together, execute. There's disguise involved in it. And again, like I said, we're trying to balance the playing field on this. Who's got the advantage? They know what the snap count is. They know whether it's a run or pass. The defense got to figure all that out. I wanted the offense to have to figure out who was coming and from where. So we would really show you over here. It's like a little bit like General Patton told Rommel in North Africa. He said, I read your book, man. I'm going to hold you by the nose and kick you in the ass. So we would sugar you up over here and then come from over here. And these guys became so good at that. And that's why people like Peyton Manning and Brady are so hard to play against. They've got the experience on the other side, and they've seen so much of this, and they hold that count. They're not afraid to go down to the wire with the snap count. And they gather information all the time. And once those guys know who's coming and where from, your goose is cooked. I guarantee you that. But these guys were just particularly gifted. And we would have a lot of sessions where I'd say, hey, tell me now, what do you think is the best way for you to show this look with Troy coming and then ended up with Harrison coming over here. And so I've made them part of the game plan too.
Yeah, obviously you had some great pieces to work with those Steelers teams. In your mind, as the game continues to evolve, and now you've got the mobile quarterbacks and everything else as well, is there in your mind a perfect defense out there, or on the flip side, an offense that you think that there isn't a defense for these days?
No, I don't think that's going to exist. Because the game of football is 11 players playing against 11 players. That's never going to change. And it's always going to be evolving. And there are going to be periods where it goes up or down. But along with the knowledge of the coaches, the athleticism of the players, that's always going to go up in an upward division. Take a look at our world records in track events. I mean, we're faster, we're stronger, and we throw the shot put further. I mean, that's going to happen that way as science and physics unite to produce bigger, stronger people. The thing is, it's always going to be this way, that way. This team comes up with something that can do that. It really works. And these guys study it in the off season. They got coaches too, and they figure it out. Maybe it takes them a couple of years, but they catch up to it, and then it's a give and take offensively and defensively. But beyond that, then you get the rules changes that come in there because there's got to be a set of rules for the teams to play by, and that's going to be able to govern a little bit of who's got a little bit of the advantage, whether they want it to be or not. It ends up that way, and then they can adjust that as you go down. But it's never going to be a static situation. And I personally never cared what kind of rules they set as a coach and a teacher. I took whatever rules there because everybody's got to play by the same rules. It would be different if they made one team play under these rules and one team play under the. Everybody in their competition, in their competitive leagues, are playing in the same set of rules. And I studied only one thing. What is the best way that I can take advantage of what the rules of the games are and fit them to the players that we have in this particular 4 years in college or as many as they last in professional football. It's not a finite number because people are going to age and your athletes are some of them are going to get injured and it's going to be a moving mixture. But will there ever be the one that you can't handle? No, because it's 11 people on 11 people, and it's going to come out where one favors the other for a little while, but it's always that's what makes it fun. What we like to watch. If you knew how the game was going to end before it started, half of the entertainment factor of it would be gone, and I don't think that's ever going to be gone. Great athletes playing against great athletes are always going to be fun to watch in any sport that you're watching. It's fun to watch a gifted golfer smack that ball, and how long it goes in the air is just unusual to see it, and that's never going to change.
Yeah, I love what you talked about there. You adjusted to those rules. As fans, you complain about the rules because, as you know, a lot of them favor the offense. So as a defense, you got to figure out, okay, these are the rules. How do I work within those rules and do your job? So I commend you for that, for, again, making those adjustments. And I'm sure, maybe as an old school guy, that wasn't as easy for you, but, you were able to do it because, again, you had the personnel to do it.
Well, let's face it, you can fight the changing of time, the changing to the guard, or it's a fact. It's part of living, and it's going to happen. Things are going to evolve. We played games. We had great defense. I played for the Detroit Lions. We led the league for several years in the 60s. Well, I was coaching in the 2000s, and it's not 1964. I mean, it's going to evolve. We played many games, 7-6, 10-7. I mean, and there was no artificial turf, and we just waited for it to become November, and the defense was going. I didn't care what the rules were. The defense was going to have a little help. Those things have all progressed down the road where, I think you can say that's tilted towards the offense a little bit. I think it always has been. Again, they know where they're going. They know what the play is. They know who their best receiver is, who their best running play is, and they can devise plans to attack what is not your strongest part on defense. And so theoretically, they should have a slight edge. Again, that was part of I said, theory of the zone blitz. I just wanted them to have to level the playing field a little bit on who's going where. But I think that will always be a changing situation. But in a way, it's what makes athletics entertaining. And beyond that, football and a lot of our sports activities now, they're facing challenges because there's an injury factor involved there. So for it to be in our school system, in our educational system, where we're asking our kids to go through and be exposed to it, I think it needs to have some inherent positive effects to the individual. And I believe with all my heart that competitive athletics can teach you stuff that a book just can't. I mean, the information can be there, but the living experience of going through the ups and downs and interacting with fellow citizens, getting together on a plan, working together, understanding that the group is more important than the individual, things that really have made democracy work for us. I think it does deserve to be in the school system, and I think that they will be adjusted as that goes down through the years too. So the rules are going to change, but the pluses and minuses are always going to be there. And like you're saying about good things to talk about and discuss, that's part of the attraction for all of us. And we're fans of certain activities and whatever appeals to us. But life is a series of choices, and hopefully we make the right one sometimes.
Well, you touched on your playing career, and you had an outstanding playing career, to say the least. 1959 to 72, 14 years with the Lions. You're an all-time team with the Lions, and Hall of Fame in 2010 as a player. You went in along with Floyd Little, the great running back with the Broncos. What is that honor like to be recognized for what you've done in your career?
Well, you can't express it in words. Grew up in a small town in Ohio, London, Ohio. It's between Columbus and Springfield. It's very agrarian, and the town was about 7,000, and there were 51 kids in my senior class. We were the last small class. The next one was all the way up to 100, but that's still pretty small for a high school. And you don't think. And I was 25 miles from Ohio Stadium, and I would get to go to one game a year, but you got 100,000 people sitting in there watching people play football, and you're in a town where the whole town would come, but there'd only be 700 people at the game. But you weren't thinking, oh, I'll go to Ohio State and play, and we'll win a national championship, and then I'll go to the NFL and play 14 years, and I'll get to be on the Detroit Lions all time. You're not thinking that way. You're just thinking about, boy, this is fun. I like to play this game, and I want to get as good as I can get at it. And people used to say I was really a late inductee into the Hall of Fame, and they'd say, well, look, you got 62 interceptions, you played 14 years, and your teams were this, and that, and don't you think, and they'd be bait me, I'm sure, to say I should be in the Hall of Fame. And I would always answer and say, listen, anybody who walks around, and people do, and it takes all kinds. I'm not trying to be critical of anybody, but for me to be saying, oh, I should be in the Hall of Fame, that to me is a very bombastic statement. There are so many great, talented athletes that aren't going to get into the Hall of Fame that probably should be in there because, again, everybody can't do it. And so I knew that statistically you could support what I had done. But if stuff like that happens, you just got to sit back and say, Dick LeBeau, you have been totally blessed to have these honors bestowed upon you, and you owe a big debt to your family, to your teachers, to your fellow teammates, all that went together that enabled you to put this kind of a life together. And I have done that. And so I've never ever said, oh, I should have been this, I should have been that. The good Lord has blessed me with plenty of honors.
Well, you're incredibly humble. Again, a great career playing wise. As you said, a total of 59 years on the sidelines in the NFL. Do you ever look back at that first job in 1973 on the coaching level, special teams coach with the Eagles, and wonder how that became 45 years as a coach in the NFL?
Well, I have many times, because all of us, if we look back on our life, it just seems like that. It goes by so fast. I've always equated it oftentimes with raising your family. The thing that you don't understand, and I say this to your program followers, from the first day that you take your child or children to freshman dormitory in college, to the day that he's walking down the aisle with a diploma in his hand, I'm telling you, you talk about a blink of the eye. And time waits for no one, man. It flashes by. And looking back, I had played 14 years, and I was always a film guy. And of course, it's video now, but it was all we had a thread, 16 millimeter, and you splice all the film that would crack all the time and sit there and watch the film. And even more time consuming than it is now. We had to get the film first. Now they got these big libraries that you can just pull it out. So I would, when I was done with practice as a player, I didn't go home. I went back to the office, and I went into the film room, and I looked at who we were playing. And then I'd look at, oh, hey, Chicago's playing pretty good defense this year. I'm going to look at them, see what they're doing. So that's not going to change. You're going to always have to invest the man hours to sit there and watch and just evolve philosophy, basically, is what you were doing. And I got done playing 14 years, and I really, especially defensively, I had a pretty good feeling of what I thought was the right thing to do. But then, there's special teams and there's offense. So it was time. I was 35 years old. It was time to actually get a real job. I hadn't been anything but a player all that time. So guess what? The main obstacle that I would hit when I would interview for these jobs? Well, you don't have any experience. They said, you haven't coached a down. I said, no, I haven't. But I've lined up for over 1,000 plays for 14 years. I said, that counts something as on the job training. But I was very, very fortunate. Again, when we were talking about awards and stuff, I've been blessed. And Mike McCormick was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I had played with Mike one year. It was my first training camp that I went to in Cleveland, and he was an all-pro tackle. And somehow, you don't, a rookie and a 12-year veteran, you're not interacting too much. But somewhere along the line, he was impressed with me. He called me in for an interview, and I, of course, wanted to coach the defensive backs and what I'd studied all my life and what I'd played. And he said, well, I got to get a defensive coordinator. And he said, we'll get back to you, and maybe I'll have something and maybe I won't. So that was the Eagle thing. And he called me back and he said, Dick, I do have a job. He said, and it's not coaching the defensive backs, it's coaching special teams. He said, and I hope you'll come and join our staff. And he said, I can pay you $18,000 a year. And I said, well, Coach, it's time for me to start coaching. I'm a 35-year-old corner, and a year ago I had a torn patella tendon. So there's not too many one-legged corners playing in the NFL. I said, I'm ready to come to work. He said, good. He said, I'll pay you $20,000 a year. So that's obviously the figure he had budgeted in, and I got a raise right away. But I went to work. Actually, a little side story on that. Marv Levy, who is now getting really along the lane, was a great coach. Yeah. He was the head coach in Canada at that time, but he had worked with Mike in Washington in their Super Bowl championship year with the Washington, whatever they call them now. It'll always be the Redskins for me, but it's not. So. He was a great special team coach, is what Marv Levy was, and he became a great head coach. Yeah. So Mike Marv was in Canada, and Mike was in Philadelphia, and he asked Marv to give me a little head start on coaching special teams. And see, I'd played. There was only 31 guys on our roster, so there weren't any specialists. There weren't any kickers. Kickers were your second team linebacker. Punters were your safeties. I mean, they all played a position because you only had 31 guys. And so I'd played special teams all my life. The only thing I didn't really play on was the field goal team. Everything else I was on. They couldn't use me on the team I held. I was a backup holder. But other than that, I knew special teams. But Marv Levy got me started with when you do this in training camp and that for my first year. But Mike McCormick gave me a shot to coach his special teams. And that's where I got started. But I will tell you this, Mike, in all seriousness, I was there 3 years. And when I left, I got to go with the coach of defensive backs for Bart Starr at Green Bay Packers, who were my hated rivals and my hated quarterback.
Yeah, from the line, sure.
My first year in the meetings, I'd look across the table and I hated Bart Starr, but I loved him for giving me a job coaching DBs, which is what I wanted to be. But when I left Philadelphia, I loved Philadelphia, a great place to live. I got a great history of sense of history. And that was, what a better place. You could go there, a different place every day if you wanted to. But I said to myself, I hope I never, ever have to watch another kicking play the rest of my life. Because, that's, like I said, if you're going to be any good coaching, you got to study. And I would study those plays. Right? And, there's either a punt return, a kickoff return, a field goal, or field goal defense. That's all there was. There was 6. And anyhow, that was my start. And I was blessed that someone gave me a job.
As you said, work for Bart Starr with the Packers, 19 years with Cincinnati, and then you go to a rival there again with the Steelers, 16 years as well. It all wrapped up for you in 2017. So 7 years not coaching. What has life been like for you away from the NFL sidelines since then?
Well, I'm not on the sidelines, but I'm still in the NFL. I can't wait till Sunday to come around. And I play a little golf while they're playing a game, but I tape them all and I watch as many as I can. I enjoy watching the game and seeing what they're doing and seeing how the game's evolving. It's a wonderful, wonderful athletes playing. And I found this, my first year as retired, I worked till I was 80. I felt like, geez, I got to be in a meeting, I got to get a game plan ready. What do I want to do on this blitz, And then finally, after month's 10th or so, month number 10, it soaked into me, hey, LeBeau, you don't have any more meetings. You don't have any more game plans. Just take it, slow down a notch. And from that day on, I'm actually more busy, I think, or as busy as I was when I was working day to day. You always have a schedule, you have a regimen, and you get up in the morning and you do it. And I still do that, and it's not that much different. And for instance, writing a book that became a great labor of love, and it was something I could devote my time to, and it was tedious. I was not the most gifted essayist, but I had plenty of help from Scott Brown and George von Benko. And the reason I sought their help out, I had no idea even how to go about getting a book published. And Scott, I think, has written 12 or 14 books, and George has written 4 or 5. So they guided me down through that, and I used their expertise. They were great help. I think we put together an interesting book for the people.
I mean, can you watch a game on a Sunday afternoon as a fan, or are you always in that coaching mode and analyzing and seeing what you would do differently as you're watching that game unfold?
Undoubtedly, I'll never be out of that mode. And I watch the defense, and I could pick up the offense with my periphery, which I did for, 60 years coaching and watching that. All I watch is my defensive guys. Are they in the right spot? Where they got to get, what's happening? Why is that defense not working? Why are they getting gashed? That'll never change. I was a lifeguard my junior and senior year in high school. And I'd sit up in that chair, and you watch the pool. Well, it was 20 years after that. I couldn't go swimming any place. I didn't go in the water. I watched everybody to make sure nobody was in trouble trying to get out of the pool. So football's the same way. I'm thinking, oh man, we should do this. We should, no, not we. You're not we anymore. And I just watch and see how the game comes out, like most fans. But that I'll never leave that. That's in me. I know that.
Well, legendary again. It's out now from Triumph Books, telling the story of the 2008 Steelers team, and again a little bit of your story as well. Coach, this has been a pleasure to hear your story, and again, incredibly humble because you had an outstanding playing career, an incredible coaching career as well, and it's great to see you enjoying life after that and relaxing a little bit. But again, I can't thank you enough for spending a little time with us here today.
Well, thanks for having me. Are you guys in Carolina?
We are. We're based out of Wilmington, North Carolina, but we've had guests from all over the place, and it's great to hear the stories.
That's God's country. I love North Carolina. One of my very, very best friends was a professional golfer, the working PGA. He was recognized by the Professional Golfers Association. for 50 years of service, and he was in Southern Pines, North Carolina.
Sure.
I've been down there many times I had a chance. I love North Carolina. I love the people in North Carolina, and I'm very, very honored that you guys would have me on.
Well, again, the honor is all ours. Again, this has been great to hear your story and continued success in your retirement and continued success with this book as well. It sounds like an amazing book, and hopefully folks watching this will go out and check that out. Those that are Steelers fans and non-Steelers fans alike as well.
They say there's one good book in everybody, so I think I probably had mine. I hope it's good.
There you go. There you go. Well, another Hall of Famer joining us here today, Dick LeBeau. Great to have him with us. Great to hear his stories and so many coaches that he coached with or coached under during his career as a player and eventually as a coach. 59 years on the sidelines in the NFL. Incredible. Our thanks to Bill Ames and Scott King with Triumph Books once again helping us arrange this sit down with another one of their authors with that book Legendary, which is out now. Also, thanks to Brandon LeBeau, the coach's son, for helping arrange this sit down for us. Great stuff here. Always great to get another Hall of Fame guest to join us. And always great to have you join us as well. We thank you for watching and for listening and invite you to like and share and subscribe to our channels to make sure you don't miss any more great guests coming up here shortly. For JR Quitman, our creator, producer, and director behind the scenes, I'm Mike Vaccaro. We thank you for joining us. Episode 94 of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. Have a great day, everybody.